Be advised, suspect is armed and considered extremely dangerous.
Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. David P. Perrodin from down here in the historic North Star recording studio. Wishing everybody well tonight. It is October 25th here, and it's suddenly gotten chilly, but it will be 60 degrees tomorrow. So a few things. I am trying to work a few bugs out of the system here with a little bit of a blinking screen and some refresh going on. And so it's our good friend All Pro Lemonton. Hey, buddy. And also, it's been a while since I've kind of done updates to my audio and video system. So it was prompting me to do some of that. So, but the main thing is I wanted to give a shout out to our cat, Mr. BoJangles, who you probably remember from some YouTube shorts, especially maybe like 3 years ago, where he would be in this very chair, and then I would come around the corner and we would stage kind of different things, like he was working on the Penske file. So he passed away on Wednesday. His health was declining. He had diabetes, diagnosed in the summer of 2023, type 1 diabetes. So when you have a cat who has type 1 diabetes, they use the litter box a lot. So they produce a lot of pee, and it's just part of having diabetes. And he also received insulin shots. So for more than 2 years, once in the morning and once at 6:30 in the morning, 6:30 at night, we would administer an insulin shot to him, which I remember when the vet told us about that. We had taken him in. He had a lump on his shoulder, basically a lipoma, like a fatty lump. And I took him in 2 summers ago, so summer of 2023, to the vet and said, can we get this removed? Because it was pretty big. And it didn't seem necessarily to be something he was fussing about. But at that time, he was about 11 and a half, but, doing okay. So, but the vet then did the blood work and said, hey, this cat has diabetes. And have you noticed, like a lot of pee in the box and frequently, and he's drinking a lot of water? And I said, yeah, actually. But at the time we had another cat who was kind of at end of stage life, and we thought it was him, and he had just passed maybe like a month before. So we didn't kind of put 2 and 2 together. But anyway, BoJangles was a really fun cat for me. Out of all of our cats that we've had, over 20 years, we adopted him in April of 2012. And it's interesting because the picture from the Humane Society, which I have, when we adopted him, my youngest daughter, was only a year and a half old. So, my wife has her in one arm and is holding the cat, and another cat's just, tiny. He's only a couple months old at that time. And of course, my daughter is high schooler now. And then, there's a picture of my other daughter who's in college, and she was like 5 at the time, and she's holding him. So he really kind of connected with me. So not so much like a cat that would hang around other cats a lot, but when I would come down to the office to do consulting or, university teaching, whatever, he would usually be in this chair. especially early in the morning. And instead of like getting out of the chair, he would just flip on his back and then put his forepaws up against me, and he would just stay on the back of the chair. And I have a couple of pictures. I think I even took a little video, and he would just he'd take a nap and he would snore and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, so that was really cool. Because he just had this personality. Now, when he was younger, he would jump from the bed all the way to the top of the armoire, which was a good jump, and he did that a lot. So, but yeah, so this week he started to, well, he was declining over the last year. I mean, this past summer, he didn't go out onto the porch, which is basically a very short walk for him. It's a screened-in porch, and then there's, maybe like a 6-inch little step you have to go down. And he goes up and down, or went up and down the basement to his litter boxes. But he didn't go out there. His whole roam range was largely from the dining room there was a corner that he would hang out, and there wasn't a lot of traffic there, or there was a cat bed that was right in front of a sliding window that looked out on the backyard. And then from there, he would kind of go to his water dish, and he would park himself then next to his food dish in the kitchen, and he would do that for hours. And if you got kind of close to the food dish, the paw would come out, and he would like just slide it toward him, which was funny because like, buddy, nobody's taking your food. And he also enjoyed ice cubes in his water. And of course, having diabetes and drinking a lot of water. I don't know how he started that. I think it was just in summer, maybe a year or two ago. And now every time like you'd go to the fridge and open the fridge, he would think he's going to get ice cubes. So he would hang out by the fridge, and he would stick his head like with his freezer on the bottom, stick his head in there to kind of get the cool air. And then you'd have to scoop out some ice cubes and put them in his dish. So, but yeah, in the last week, he was not eating, really. Let me see if I can bring comments on screen. Yeah, I can. So there we go. It's Misty Mrs. Wayne. Hello. So yeah, he wasn't eating very much, and he wasn't drinking. And then early this week, he stopped going down to litter boxes. I was carrying him down, and you could obviously tell as I would hold him. I mean, we've had cats before, and he was the oldest cat we had. He was just shy of 14. That his back had gotten real bony over the last few weeks, and he was just looking really rough. And he had a really strong odor, but it was like a really strong pungent odor, which I kind of believe was the kidneys and kind of the systems shutting down, and it kind of works its way out of the body. And it was something I never experienced before with any of our cats, but it was definitely I mean, you just had all these indicators. So we talked about it as a family, and he had a terrific life here. And so Wednesday, took him into the vet, and I stayed with him. And that was the first time I'd ever done that with any of our cats too, was during the process when they're euthanized, was to stay with them. And I just had decided I was going to do that. So came in, and they were really, very efficient as far as like, when you got in, they got you back to the room, and then, the tech came in, and they took him and put the little IV thing in his paw. And then, they said, well, take as much time as you need. And I said, well, yeah, I won't really only need just give me a minute, because, we've done our farewells. And so they came back in, and yeah, I was holding him as they did the injection, and then you could tell his head just, slowly went down, and that was it. It was sad. It was a day too where, here we've had like the string of like 55 and sunny degree days, and So Wednesday, when I took him in, it was 30-mile-an-hour winds. It was raining. It was like in the 40s, and so you just had this chill. And so, like, the day kind of fit what was happening. But that was for me. Then I went and I took a drive, and just kind of drove around for a while. The next day, the weather was nice, so I got out and spent a few hours. There's new hiking trails on the one side of town, and just to kind of think through things. And one of the things, obviously sad, because you have this cat that you adopt when he's probably like 3-4 months old, and I don't I mean, he might even been a little younger than that, and he's all vibrant and able to run up and down these cat towers and all around, and then somehow, right, time just marches on and you don't probably realize it so much, and he starts to slow down. I remember like 4 or 5 years ago, because he would still jump up on this chair and hang out and be waiting for me to come down. But then, yeah, maybe like 3 years ago, we noticed he was kind of limping. So we thought maybe he jumped off a bed or something like that, and he might have strained a muscle. But he his mobility just kind of continued to decline. He wasn't actually kind of limping as much, but he would, if he was going from the water dish to the food dish, which were literally 10 feet apart, he would take a break between the two. He wouldn't walk straight over. And, that was really a sign that he was conserving his energy. So Gabriel was saying, I will not do that again unless the pet is in severe pain. So, yeah, not exactly, if you want to add a little more there. So yeah, our pet was, so BoJangles, and Andrew remembers the Penske File little videos, the shorts with BoJangles. Yeah, his body had shut down. He stopped eating and stopped using his litter boxes. Not that he just stopped. He wasn't like peeing in the house or something like that. It's just like he just stopped. And having cats that have gotten to their kind of end of life, it was like, whoa, you're pretty close, buddy. So, and obviously taking him in, the vet's like, yeah, he's right here at the end. But it was, for me, I thought it was really valuable to be with him because he was calm. Like, I'm there and I'm holding him, and he wasn't trying to run away from anybody. And I was like, yeah, I don't want them to take you in the back and where you're in this other bigger room and whatever, and you don't know what's going on. And I just thought that was a good thing for me to do. So, and I did feel good about that. I think I would have felt bad had I been like, okay, said our goodbyes, take the cat and do what you need to do. So, but yeah, it was really a surreal thing. Like, I hadn't been through that before. And like I said, he had a really cool personality. And I think I was the one in the house, that he kind of connected with the most, which is pretty rare because like I've had really none of that with the other cats. Like, I like all the other cats. We get along well, but like BoJangles would just kind of wait again down here in the office for me, or kind of find me in the house and hang out and stuff. So yeah, well, I appreciate. Yeah, sorry for your loss and everybody posting that. Yeah, but he was 14, or maybe just shy of 14. We don't know the exact birth date. We know the date that we adopted him, April 12th, 2012. So, but yeah, he had diagnosed diabetes since the summer of 2023. So twice a day we administer insulin. I remember when the vet came out and told us that, hey, this cat has type 1 diabetes, and if he's going to keep living, I mean, you probably need to administer insulin. So they did the test and stuff, and then we were buying insulin, which was expensive, and needles. Um, and we'd get up at 6:30 in the morning and 6:30 at night. And the thing was, like, the cat never flinched. The needles are very small, and the vet said that too. Like, you pinch the back of the neck and do it, and cat's not going to know. He never once ever flinched, so it was very easy to do the insulin injections. So we had a little vial we had to keep in the fridge. So, but that was a commitment too we made, because he was, again, other than the diabetes, I mean, he was definitely slowing down, and the diabetes was slowing him down, but he was still coming out and being social and hanging out, enjoyed the fireplace, and having fires in winter. And the other cats, he got along with well, especially our youngest, Domino. Those two hung out quite a bit. Even like in the last week, Domino would hang out. And I've got a couple pictures of the two of them. Although, like, when you take pictures kind of like in the last week of your animal's life, like, they just look like a shell of themselves. So I was kind of digging through and finding a few pictures first of, like, when we adopted him, because there's some really neat ones. And then we have some just really cool pictures of him. He was very noble, like, and just had a very an awesome kind of coat too, like his fur. So yeah, so kind of knew it was going to be happening, and just like with our other animals, it seems like it does happen, very, very fast. And there was nothing you could do. Obviously his body had shut down. He was in end stage, and as the vet said, you gave him a really good life. A lot of people, once a cat is diagnosed, especially when they're older, I guess, he was diagnosed at, a little under 12 with the type 1 diabetes. I said a lot of people will just euthanize a cat at that point, because realistically, with the needles and insulin, it's about $100 a month to continue that. And also you have to keep a schedule. So if someone is working or traveling or something, and you can't administer insulin at a set 2 times a day, then it doesn't work for the cat. So, we would be at my daughter's basketball or volleyball games last year, and my wife and I, and we'd be watching the clock and be like, hey, like, it's getting close to 6:30. Thankfully, like, we live within a 10-minute walk of the high school. So usually what I would do then is I would, if it was 6:20, I would leave and walk home and then administer the shot. So yeah, let me go through some of the comments. I appreciate everybody here, and just, giving a shout out to a really good buddy. I didn't know how this would hit. Like, it was just it was a sad day, obviously. And then with the weather just kind of like keeping me inside, that wasn't good. But then the next day to be out and just kind of put things in perspective. And I remember telling my daughters years ago, when our cats would pass, and say, well, we wouldn't have had this cat unless, the cat before it had passed. So, we're going to give the cats the best life we can for as long as we can, but there will always be another cat out there who is waiting for a home and waiting for this home. And I kind of think of Domino now, who's just an unbelievable amount of fun and personality for a cat. And, we had a cat previous to him, Rolo, who died at 12 and had cancer, and was diagnosed. And when, he lived eight months with that progressive cancer, and oh man, that was rough. Misty, Mrs. Wayne is saying, we lost Buddy, our bird, the first of the year. Pets are part of the family. My heart goes up. Sorry to hear that, Misty. Agrizer, rip BoJangles. Yeah. BoJangles had a really, his personality was a lot like mine. And what I'll say to that is, like, he was more kind of to himself. I would say a little bit more serious. He was never a cat that would hiss at you or try to scratch or bite you. there were times like in the last 2 years because he was conserving energy, and over to the right of me is the stairs. So downstairs are the cat boxes, and he would make it up and down okay. But if he knew I was down here, right, and he would come downstairs, use the boxes. Sometimes he would sit by the bottom of the stairs and he would do a few meows like meow, meow, meow. And I'd be like, and what he was doing is he wanted you to lift him up to the top of the stairs. I call it the cat elevator. So I would like peek around the corner and make eye contact with him. And as you walk by him, then he would stand up and he'd get ready for you to hold him and lift him up in the cat elevator. And I thought that was pretty cool. And if like I was doing in a meeting or something, and after a little bit, if I couldn't get over there, he would make it upstairs on his own. But Masculine Geek, I appreciate the condolences. So yeah, really, really good guy. It was 14 years with us. It wasn't a surprise. We kind of knew when he had the diabetes and this big lipoma, and just that we didn't know how much time we'd have with him. And, we had 26 months. And again, it was really, I think, pretty good quality time for him up until, maybe like the last week. And then he started to get confused also at night. So, Egg Riser had lost 3 cats at 3. That's rough. I understand what you're saying. We lost, I think, 3 cats in 1 year. One had a seizure out of the blue, and a younger cat, maybe 5-6 years old, and that never recovered from that. Like it had brain damage. And then we had a cat that had some type of growth that we didn't know, and went into respiratory distress, and then the vet did an x-ray and there was a big mass, and that was it. And then I just remember it was just crazy because I'm like, well, we feed our cats, we take them to the vet, they have a very nice house, they have a lot of area for, we always take care of their litter boxes, and it just seems so kind of odd, right, that people say, well, we have a cat that's 15 or 18 years old. I'm like, wow, I mean, I don't know why that's not happening for us. So so do people buy cats? Well, we adopted our cats. All of our cats came from the Humane Society, and there's a fee, and I don't know what it is. I know it's a little bit more now. I think it's like $100 to adopt an animal. And I mean, the Humane Society needs to function too. But yeah, so that's where we've always, got our family cats. Yes, someone said, is you can always buy another one. Well, there is something, there's a reality, right, that there are always animals in need of a home. So if you have the means to do that, then certainly, do that. Andrew is saying, my mom's 17-year-old dog is having problems with his back legs. I get a red light therapy. Had no light for him. Wow, used it today when I stopped by. I'll see him in a week, see if he does better. Yeah, it was really great that you do that. And yeah, 17 is a long life for a dog. Yeah. As George Carlin said, life is a series of dogs. I think that applies to cats also. So, there was an interesting thought that was running through my well, there's a couple things. So one is when I was, so it was Wednesday, that, took him to the vet, and then, I said, just crazy weather. It's horrible. But the next day it was sunny and it was about 50, but there was no wind. So it was like really nice. And like I said, there's all these new trails on the edge of town, which ironically like go past like a dog park, although like no one's ever out there, and kind of into this farmland. And I had like a nice like 6-mile walk. It was only me, like no one's out there. And it's really a time you can kind of just think. And I was thinking about like, I was sad, obviously, because, I thought that, that I really appreciated the time that cat was with us. But as I looked at the pictures of BoJangles, and he was young, right? We adopted him. He's like just a couple months. But I'm looking and I'm like, I'm seeing myself, right? And I'm young. I'm like, like what, 41, something like that, 40. And then I just look completely different and dark hair and just young features. And looking at my daughter, who was with him, my wife's holding her, and she's a year and a half old. And now, we're taking her out and she's learning how to drive. And then my other daughter is holding him and just all happy. And she's in college now. And, she's like 5 in the picture. And I'm like, wow, the cat was a connection. BoJangles was a connection to that point. He bookended that part of my life to some extent. When we lost him, I guess when I lost him, I felt a loss of a connection to a time that we no longer have, right? Like, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it definitely felt like I was losing a connection to the past. I guess there was some nostalgia in there. And then also was just a reflection of like, well, if we adopt a cat, because we wouldn't bring another cat in before Christmas, because with the Christmas tree and ornaments and things like that, cats, at least in our experience, young cats have a tendency to think of the Christmas tree as something to climb. But let's say that in spring we decide, to adopt, and we probably would adopt a kitten, because, our current cats are 3 and 7. So just to give some balance in there. But if that kitten lived 14 years, like, I'd be almost 70 by the time, that cat would be at the end of his journey with us. And so it's just this weird bookending of life. I think it just got to be a real, just kind of perspective thing. And then I think there's also a real tenderness in taking care of a cat who can't take care of himself anymore, but still has like his cognitive functioning. But, my wife would clean him. And so I do have one picture of that where she has a towel out, and he didn't enjoy it, but he never like fought it, because I think he knew like, hey, you're with us, buddy. So we are, we're wiping you down and wiping your fur and just keeping you as hygienic and good as you can be. I also got like a different type of litter, and it was kind of toward the end, like a paper pellet litter, which seemed to work, because he would completely sit down in his litter box when he would go pee, and then that would get onto him toward the end. So, but yeah, it was kind of weird. I had an extra bag of it, so I had to find the receipt and take it back to the store. And they're like, "Any reason to return this?" I'm like, yeah, the cat who used this is no longer with us. So, so Egg Riser is saying, I definitely feel like there are pet epochs. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Brackets of time, the place. I'm with you. I think that's really a great way to put it. And I definitely felt that. I was going through, I was going through pictures, and then I was sending pictures to my daughter in college and just my wife of like, here's some pictures over, the years of BoJangles. And, the day he passed to go through and he also liked his bananas. So like in the image, it's a screenshot, these catnip bananas you get from Walmart. He just loved to be he put his head down on those and he would carry those around. So we just picked up, it's kind of a running joke, is I think at one time we had 6 or 7 bananas. So Halloween falls on a Friday this year. That's right. And a week after Halloween is my birthday. So, yeah, that was a hard thing. I think the hardest thing is you just look at these images and you're just like, wow, it's a time that's passed by. Like, your you're looking at your kids who are young, you're looking at yourself who's young. And, you also see things. I'm like, oh, like that's what that's what that part of the house looked like before we did some remodeling, or here's whatever, or, you, it is just this weird acknowledgement of a passing of time, or a bookending, kind of, as Egg Riser said, or eight brackets. So Egg Riser's got a birthday, hey, a day before mine. When I was a kid, like a Friday birthday was always like the best, and the second best would be like a Saturday, because you could sleep in. Now it doesn't really mean that much to me what day of the week that my birthday's on, but it does happen to be on a Friday this year. So yeah, so a few things I would say from the BoJangles kind of experience is one, if you are able, and I guess it's different for everybody, right? But if you are able to be with your pet at the very end, do that, because I really felt, I mean, he was purring, he was calm, was petting him, and he just, I was just like, and then the lights went out, his head went down, and then that was it. And he wasn't in any pain through any of that. He wasn't scared. He wasn't, with people who he didn't, well, I mean, people he didn't know who were there, but I mean, I was primarily, the one with him. So, I think there is something, to that. And there was something for me, which I just really felt right, even though it was really hard. I was like, oh God. So, yeah. So Gabriel is saying, I was thinking of drawing a timeline showing which pet and human lives overlapped and when for a family. Wow, that's amazing. First of all, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. So thank you. And yeah, I was asking my wife, she has the documents of like when we had the cats, like when we adopted them, and then when they left us. And I have a file that usually has like the date that we adopted the cats, and then if they pass, I just have one file now. It's like, kind of previous pets, I guess. And yeah, BoJangles got moved back to that file. But he was, when we adopted BoJangles, we adopted a week later Rolo, who was a 1-year-old cat that was returned to the Humane Society. And he was a big cat. We're talking like, 1-year-old, probably like a 30-pound cat. And he reminded us of the cat we had before him, who had passed of that big mass in his chest. But yeah, Rolo was a really fun fellow, but he was hard to keep litter box trained, and I think that's probably why it was returned. I remember the people at the Humane Society saying that he had a really rough first year, and so I think there was a little bit of a sense of, well, let's see what we can do for him going on. But we ended up replacing, after he passed, about 2.5 years ago, we had to replace like a whole carpet in a main room, because toward the end he had been using a section, and so I had to take the carpet and I had to really work on the boards and underneath and stuff like that. But again, I mean, that was rare. We had one, he was just that guy. But sometimes you just do what you have to do with animals and how, things work. But, as I think of BoJangles, like BoJangles rarely ever had an accident in the house. And even like toward the end, I mean, he knew, like, he would go and use his boxes. And so, and I feel bad because a few things with humane societies. One is where we adopted him, I was on the Humane Society website and was looking at cats. Not that we were going to adopt a cat, but I was just kind of curious as to like how many cats they had, because on the news the night that BoJangles had passed, they were interviewing a local Humane Society, and they were talking about how they were overwhelmed with animals, and then also they didn't have the funding to kind of take care of these animals. And then the director was saying, well, there's a few things at play here. One is we're people are living in rentals, whether it be a house or an apartment or a condo, whatever, and they either can't have animals, or they're afraid that if they do have an animal, and something happens, it ruins a carpet or something, that then they're going to have this big bill. So you have fewer people who are adopting because they don't have a place that accepts the animal. The other part is it cost a lot to feed an animal. For our cats, when we had BoJangles, he would go through a large bag of litter. I mean, I'm talking like a 40-pound bag of litter every week, because again, when he would pee, like the whole box have to be cleaned out because of the diabetes. The cat's just drinking water nonstop. So it's like, and then of course vet bills, and people are saying, we can't do this, right? Or not that maybe they want to do it, but there's just other realities coming into play we don't have a place where we can have an animal with us, or we can't absorb the cost of feeding the animal. And so like I was going through the Humane Society, and I'm like, so many animals who are older. Like there was one cat, 14 years 2 months, and a picture of the cat looked really stoic, but I'm trying to think of the backstory. Like, how did that cat end up there? Was it someone's, pet, and then they passed on, or they went into assisted living, or did somebody move, or did they just like say, hey, we can't keep this cat anymore? Who knows? But I did notice there were far more animals that were older. And that kind of goes with a little bit of reading I had done of where humane societies, and I guess animal shelters, groups like that across the country were identifying the pattern of people giving up their animals in this economy. And again, in the economy, and then also I think it's that, plus it's coupled with the move toward more rental living. So man, that's pretty heartbreaking, because I think that trend will continue. I don't know what reverses that, because I don't think things are going to get cheaper to own a pet. Will continue to be expensive. Vet bills can be very expensive. And I mean, people buying pet insurance now. I mean, we're just in this really strange timeline, and I feel bad that you have what would be a potential really giving, fun animal for a family to potentially bring in, but they can't, because again, they're like, well, we don't have an extra whatever to take care of this animal, the expenses. And yeah, Armored Ghost is saying everything's expensive today. It is. I mean, even, the euthanizing the cat was fairly expensive. But yeah, and the surgery would have been expensive when he had the lipoma, if they would have been able to remove that. And again, I think some of these things you just accept. And again, I'm older, and we're able to maybe do some of that thing, those things to an extent. But when you adopt an animal, it's kind of like, well, if the animal gets sick, and we're going to try to get him back, or him or her, right, to where they have a quality of life. But yeah, so but yeah, I think it was, today I'm kind of moved on uh, past, I would walk through the kitchen, like yesterday, and instinctively kind of look in the corner where he typically was, or like you'd open up the freezer and he would immediately kind of work his way up and try to he'd get over there for the cooler, and he wanted his ice cubes, and so like those things that you kind of just do by reflex. um I've kind of worked beyond that, but yeah, it hit me pretty hard. So Arbor Ghost is talking about the high price of beef and stock, lower price chicken, pork, and egg riser. They're going to end up eating squirrel once I've had my fill. Yeah, I the vet said to me, I mean, it was, I didn't want to get into a big conversation. Thankfully, they let you pay before all of this. So like when it's done, you just leave. And so another suppressed comment. So I don't know. I'm not doing any regulating here of comments. I don't know if somebody is, but that was I think a good process that they have, when it's euthanizing a cat or an animal, right? Of having you take care of the payment. So when you're done, just picked up the cat carrier and left the room and then right out to the car. I mean, you don't have to interact with people, because at that point I'm pretty drained. I'm just not wanting to do that. But I appreciate, the vet said, you gave him a good life. And in a lot of households with this type of, at least type of medical needs, like he wouldn't have made it this long. And she said, you guys have, always have brought him in and really given him good quality care. And you can just tell like the way that he was, like when I was there, and, and I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that you said that. So, but yeah, I was trying to think in perspective of why I felt so sad. And again, it was twofold. It was one, that he was a cat that really connected with me. Out of everybody else, he was with me. But then again, it was looking through the pictures, and you see the cat, right? But then you see yourself 10 years younger. You see your family. You see your, kids, and they've got their little toys out, now they're adults. And it forces you when you're going through and kind of like just trying to find some pictures just to share with everybody, like in the day. I'm not going to do that every day, but the day that he, passed, just to give everyone a little perspective. And then also, it's a sad day, so show some fun pictures of this cat. But it was like, whoa. I'm looking and I'm kind of studying some of these, and I'm like, wow, I kind of don't remember those times that well either, when the kids were just little. And you're going through other pictures then, because I have them all saved by year and I have them all backed up and on CDs anyway. But then you also see, like other things that we were doing at that time, and little vacations, or like the time we had the tent in the backyard and the girls would play in that, and we stayed overnight in the tent, and it's just, yeah, you kind of, it's kind of a walk down memory lane a little bit. And even toward the very end with Mr. BoJangles, he would be in the bedroom, and he'd be on my side of the bed, and he would be on the floor. He couldn't jump on the bed or anything anymore. And I always would leave the door open so he could come in, because he would scratch. He would want his ice cubes. But toward the end, he didn't necessarily want his. I'd have to get up like twice during the night in the last probably like year, because he would be scratching. And I'd get up, and he would take me to fridge and he wanted his ice cubes. And I was like, well, I, did that. But he would sit and you could hear him purr. And, I just think it made him feel content. But he was also, right here in the last, like week, the nights were disorienting for him. I think he had a hard time finding his way around the house. He just seemed more kind of confused and uncertain. And of course, that would be very much what you'd expect in a kind of end of life situation. But Gabriel is saying, I was physically holding in real life the 3 cats and 2 dogs at the end. And I did that too. Yeah. Okay. But putting my dog down due to cancer just ripped me apart. Yeah. Yeah. We had a cat who we had adopted right after we got married. The first cat we ever owned. And he was a blast. And when he got to be, we moved down here then. And when he got to be like 10 years old, he was just one day, he was out in the front room and he was panting, like trying to catch his breath. And something wasn't right. So I immediately took him in to the vet. And then that's, and then I remember the vet kind of checking him out. The vet said, this cat is in distress. And they took him to the back, and then I'm waiting. And like 30 minutes later, the vet comes out and says, he passed. I'm like, whoa, what? And then he said, if he could come back, and he showed the x-ray because he asked, can we take an x-ray? I'm like, yeah, whatever, to try to figure out what's going on. And there was this big mass. And he said, he goes, I don't know how long he had it. And he said, did you see any symptoms? I'm like, the cat was like jumping on the cat tower, doing everything up until like today. Like this was, he said, yeah, just really a strange thing. And, but he had this mass, which you couldn't see from the outside and it wasn't impacting, but that was a shock. So I wasn't ready for that. But then when we had our cat that had cancer, he lived for 8 months. And it was hard because he tried to stay with us. He would throw up his food and he would do it downstairs. And it's almost like he did it on the concrete floor, so it was easier to clean up. It was just, you'd hear him, and it was this, this cancer is kind of taking its hold on him. But again, he's still hanging out with us. He would still get on the cat tower up until like a couple of weeks toward the end, but he completely, he had this quality of life, but you could just tell this cat was like, couldn't figure out what's going on. He's just like a big, gentle guy. He was a big, gentle cat. He was the kind of cat where on Halloween, he would stand at the door, just stand there. And as the kids would come up and watch them and stuff like that. And if a plumber was here or something, like the cat would always be like 2 feet away, just hanging out. And I remember like a plumber said, is this cat angry? Or I'm like, no, that cat's not angry or ornery. And he'll completely leave you alone. He just likes to be around people. But yeah, the one where our cat had cancer, it was really sad because then his body just swelled up at the end. He just kind of bloated. And again, he was still, again, had cognitive awareness. So I think it's really hard when you're making that decision. Well, the vet is saying too, it's nothing that can be done. And then, cat passes. Did BoJangles attack the furniture? No, he never did any harm to any part of the house. So Rollo didn't attack the furniture, but Rollo had some accidents, and he kind of motivated us to go with hard flooring in some areas. But we have one couch that has been kind of used as a scratching post by maybe a couple of cats. That we have a blanket over on one side. But again, we have the cat towers, which they they scratch on those quite a bit with the sisal rope, but for the most part, like all of our cats have been really good with the furniture. So yeah, nothing like that. So yeah, it was. So I knew like the night before that, okay, so that Tuesday night is like pretty clear that things are ending like pretty fast. So then obviously calling the vet the first thing Wednesday morning, say, when can we get in? And they said, let's do 11:15. I said, okay. Then you have like this period of time, right, of this 3 hours when you're hanging out with the cat. Me and BoJangles are hanging out, and I fill his bowl up, his water bowl with ice cubes, and he's kind of licking the ice cubes. Toward the end, it was kind of really hard for him to eat with that growth also that was inoperable. And then just hanging out with him, he's at that point very lethargic, but I'm sitting down next to him and got his catnip bananas around him, and so he's kind of hearing my voice, and I'm petting him, and just it was hard to get him in the cat carrier. I put the cat carrier downstairs around a corner and had opened it up, and I carried him downstairs. And then when he saw the carrier, then he started to resist. He didn't want to go in the carrier, which is natural. Like vet visits, I don't think we've ever had an animal who's really willingly wanted to go into the carrier, and I was just like, oh buddy, I mean, I don't want to be doing this. And but if I would have brought the carrier upstairs, I think he would have tried to hide. And when he hides, like if somebody would come over or something like that, he would go inside of the couch. And if he goes inside the couch, it's really hard to get him out of the couch. Like he works his way in the back and goes actually inside of. So I didn't want to be dealing with that. So I had a pretty good, plan to do that, and waited until, the very last moment. And the vet is only about a 5-minute drive from where we're at. So, got him, put him in the carrier. We went to the vet, and within 2 minutes we're back in the room. And, 10 minutes after that, I'm leaving. So, I think we'll adopt a cat in spring. We'll adopt a kitten, and that'll get some spacing in the ages of our cats. Also, I would guess at some point we'll just be a 2-cat house. I mean, again, we'll be a 3-cat because we do like cats, and we have the space, for the cats, and it's always, I feel if you're able to do it, then do it. But I don't think we would ever be like a 1-cat family, at least in the foreseeable future, because we have Domino and Buttercup. Domino's 3, Buttercup 7, and they hang out a lot together. So I think having like a companion for a cat is a big thing. So yeah, I think maybe in like April or probably in April, if we were to adopt, that would be when we would start looking. Wouldn't be this time of year again, because with Christmas coming up, bringing a Christmas tree, like we had, even though we adopted Domino in summer, he was still had a lot of energy and was climbing that Christmas tree. So we would wait. And also, the house is closed down in winter, where we can open up the screen and porch and kind of give a little more space for animals once we hit spring. And I think, we also we want some time to just kind of settle into what things are like now. And our other 2 cats seem to, so not having BoJangles in the house doesn't seem to be impacting them. I know there can be times cats look around and try to figure out what's happening if there's a cat missing that they've been with like for a long time. I was glad I took some video of BoJangles. So I've got those little videos where he was down here in the chair, like the Penske file, and then also when we adopted Domino, just a kitten, 4 months old, 3 4 months old. Domino would go over to BoJangles and give him a bath for like 20, 30 minutes. And BoJangles just appreciated that. So, and at that point, he couldn't do as much of his cares. So this little cat would just like go over and be determined to give this bigger sibling of his now a bath. So he'd be licking BoJangles, and then BoJangles, if he would rub up by his neck, he would shake his back leg, and that actually stopped about a year ago. But when he would get this bath, all of a sudden, like that back leg would get shaking. It was, I don't know, it was a pretty tender thing again to see, like how this newly adopted kitten had just become kind of determined to be a caregiver and to hang around with the older brother, who was at that point, in his last, had the diabetes and had slowed down, and like they got along really well. So I think that was also a good thing, because even at the end when BoJangles wasn't doing much, maybe going from two ends of the kitchen, Domino would still, find him and hang out with him. I said, like 5-6 days ago, I got a picture of the two of them hanging out by the food dish. So big cats or small cats? We have all of it. I mean, I guess we have just normal size cats now. BoJangles was a little bit on the bigger side. We've had some big cats in the past, but yeah. Gabriel is saying, universal cat distribution system activate. Yeah. There's also this kind of deep reflection too. Like again, I was taking this walk. It was perfect weather, and there's again these trails on the side of town go right next to like a farmer's field, like 10 feet away from where corn stalks were, and they just harvested. So it's very quiet. And when it's sunny and 50 degrees and no wind, it's really nice to be out there. But again, I'm thinking, kind of for the first time, I'm like, well, in a week I'm like 54, which is hard to believe, because looking at these pictures, when we adopted BoJangles, I'm like 41, and you're 41, you're like, well, that's old, but like if you're 41, that's like Aaron Rodgers' age. You could still play in the NFL. You could still, if you're 54, right? It's kind of a whole different thing. Like as a kid, 54 would be like, whoa, that person's really old. But I'm thinking, yeah, man, if we adopt a kitten, let's say, and was 14 years old, I'll be almost 70. And it's just kind of a weird thing to kind of like think where you'd be at that phase, and then be like, holy smokes, like my daughter want to be almost 30, and the other one would be into her 30s. Not that they'd be here anymore, but I mean, like living in the house, for example. But wow, our daughter came back from college a week ago, and she said, one of the first things when she came in the house is she said, BoJangles still here? And we're like, yeah, he is. Like he'll, hang around, and she was painting some small pumpkins and things like that. And he was, on the floor kind of near her. And, but I remember when I was in college and we had a dog who, had gotten older, and I came home on a weekend, and then I was like, oh, where's Sparky? And they're like, hey, yeah, we had to take Sparky to the vet. He had, his health was failing. We go, oh man, back then you didn't have email. Like when I was in college, like that wasn't around or anything. So it really would need to be a phone call. But yeah. So let me see here. What is Armored Ghost? Do your cats see you as bigger, stronger cat that will hunt for the. I'm not sure what that word is. Clouder. Do they see me as the bigger? I don't know. I guess, yeah. I know you can study that of like how a cat responds to you if it views you as like um, kind of like another cat or like I don't know. I know there's certain things. One thing that BoJangles would always do if I was wherever I was standing, if he was around me for a while, he would start to rub up against my leg. And you know where they do it with the cheek to put their pheromones on you, right? I think, and I don't know if that's to kind of like to claim, like, hey, like this is my owner or something like that. But he was the only cat I've ever had do that. And talking about that, it was always funny to see Domino, even in the last week, when he would go up to BoJangles or pass him, he would always take his head and brush it up against the side of him or give him a little nudge. Like the two brothers would just saying, hey, I'm here. So, yeah. I really don't know too much what else to say. I think anytime, I mean, it is a pet, right? So I don't want to take this out of proportion. But I think there's a different feel when you have a loss in your life, if that loss occurs in spring or fall. And I think a loss in fall, especially, I guess, for context, I live in Wisconsin. So, what I did today is I ran my snowblower for 5 minutes. I gassed it up and got it ready for the season. We don't have snow yet, but we will. So where I'm at, it's cold and snowy. So really from November through the first week of April, it's snowy, it's overcast, it's cold. So that I don't like. I'm not a winter person. I don't have any real winter hobbies. So it's just a kind of a time I'm kind of getting through that time. I just don't do a lot. I don't like outdoor stuff. But yeah, of course it gets darker early. So, 10 days it'll be dark at 4:30. I think in fall or in winter, it's much more tedious to deal with loss and to process it, because like I remember distinctly in spring, and just talking loss in general, and in spring you can get out, right? You can get outside, at least again, I'll use the example, I'm in Wisconsin. Things are starting to green up, so you see life kind of animating again, and you have more sunlight, daylight hours, right? So I think there are these aspects where loss, and then also if you have like surgery and recovery, and I've talked to a couple people about this. I said, a friend of mine was going through some pretty tough medical stuff with his family, and it was in very early spring, like March, April, and we were talking. I said, well, one of the things, I said, I'm not trying to be like I know it all and whatever, but I think a recovery, a medical recovery, it's better to face that in March and April, where you're recuperating as it's more sunlight and temperatures are getting warmer. You're able to get outside again, things are greening up, and just that kind of life energy comes back, versus like October, November, where you're like, whoa, like it's sunlight's going to get shorter, it's going to get colder, it's overcast more. I think it's just it's harder to be as resilient during that time. Thankfully for me, for tomorrow, I got out yesterday and was able to do like a lot of yard work. Or no, it was 2 days ago. So Wednesday was our final day with BoJangles. So, no, I don't know. Maybe it was a day after me. I'm kind of mixed up on that, but I did have a day I was able to do yard work, which was good. Kind of, keeps your mind off of things. And tomorrow it's going to be almost 60, so I'll definitely be outside. We have the leaves falling down now, but I'm going to wait a little while because I just mowed with the mulcher in the last 2 days. And we had a couple hard freezes, so all of the leaves will be down. I just have my big oak in the back, and the leaves are definitely looking like they're ready to come down, and then the maple in the front. So I think in 10 days, all leaves will be down. And I spent an area, though. We have this wooded area at the end of our property in the back, 100 feet back. And I cleared out about a 5-6 foot wide area, and then where it would go back by maybe 8 feet. And that's where I move all the leaves, and then they decompose over, the winter and stuff like that. But that had been filled in with a lot of brush. So I had to go back there and cut that down and saw some things, limbs and stuff out of the way to kind of make this path. And it turned out pretty well. So it'll be easier because with the backyard, I just basically use the leaf blower, and it takes a while, but I can work everything back to the section, and then I'll take the rake at the very end and just move everything back there. In the front, I just keep mowing. Front yard's not as big, and then eventually things just break down. And it's kind of weird too, because you get your leaves, but then you get the leaves from the neighbors who fall, and we're kind of at the top of a hill, so we don't get hit too hard with that. Although my neighbor's leaves come into our yard. He keeps telling me he's going to take his mower, a brand new nice mower and bagger, take it through and pick up our leaves. I'm like, yeah, that I'm all for that, buddy. In the back, you can go and do that. So, yeah, tomorrow I'll do something. Definitely, I'm going to be outside, enjoying the sunshine and the nice weather. And then I think, it'll be a further kind of distancing from, from the sadness of losing BoJangles. And again, as we've talked here, it's this multifaceted thing. It is one thing to lose him. It's also this thing too, where you see this passage of life. At the time, right? He's just a kitten. You have him, and then he's getting older, and then suddenly some health issues show up, and then at the end, you're holding him, and he's really frail, and he's aged, and he's very is bony because his body is consuming his muscle, to give it energy, and you're just wow, you're just vibrant, and just it's all of our lives, this entropy of life. It's just on a faster scale. Here it was 14 years, and take a human, it's 70, 80 years. But I remember watching a YouTuber a couple months ago. I think it was Wrangle Star, if you're familiar with him. And his dad had passed, and he had made a video within a day or two of that happening. And in this video, he had talked about how it was really just difficult to see how much his dad had wasted away physically. Because he would say, I remember he'd be out building things and cutting firewood and just all of this stuff. And then, you see this person who's ascending when you're young, and then they're still, kind of at this plateau, but they're maintaining, and then suddenly they're descending. And then he reflected on his own life, because he's maybe, mid 40s, and his son is in college now, and I think his daughter's still at home. But he said, I was thinking about myself, and, I'm no longer ascending. I've plateaued, but there will be a point when I'll start to descend, and then his son is ascending, right? So he said, I see this property here of being turned over to my son and maybe his family before long, and then I would turn the house. I mean, it's again Wrangle Star in this channel, but there was something to that again. I'm looking, and that just sets in it's right there in front of you when, you have this cat. It's like, where these 14 years go? What happened here? And yeah, so we'll see. Like I said, I think in spring we'll adopt, and the thing is, like, we do enjoy cats. Yeah, and I think both of our cats would do well with a younger cat. But then, there is this kind of feeling too of like, I don't know how this might be the last time like we would be a 3-cat household just as we get older. And yeah. So I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts or any experiences like that you've had. Please share them in the comments. When I took BoJangles to the vet, I had steeled myself. I'm like, I'm not going to cry at the vet. I mean, it's a cat, right? And I'm like, but when I was there, and then the vet's like, yeah, you've really given him a good life. Went above and beyond. And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, we're all there. We just know, this is it. 14 years goes into data centers. Holy smokes. Yeah. I don't know what you mean by that exactly. I guess I would extrapolate and say like all of our lives and everything that's been digital over the last more than 14 years is all existing in data centers. I'll do a little tangent here that in the county over from us, Dane County, where Madison, Wisconsin, the capital is, they are putting in a data center which will use 2.5 times the electricity that's used for all of Dane County. So again, Madison, which is about 1 million people metro. So they're putting this data center. And in Port Washington, Wisconsin, there's a data center. I think the initial investment is $8 billion in that one. $8 billion. So the data centers, Wisconsin has really become a target for those because we have a lot of water. We have the Great Lakes, right? Superior, Lake Michigan. So you see these coming up in these areas, or like where the Wisconsin River is. And apparently, I don't know, there's not a lot of regulation. I've also been hearing like northern New York, like upstate New York has a lot of these data centers going in. But you're talking about, so in 2024, it was about $23 billion of permits for commercial and residential building in the state. And right now, just in 2025, the permits for data centers in our state are more than that. And so there's getting to be a lot of questions too about like, what are we going to do with the energy demand, right, for these data centers? And not only that, but water. And also, these things aren't very thoroughly discussed. Suddenly people learn about it, and then suddenly they want to have meetings and a referendum. And so a lot of this is happening kind of out of the spotlight of the public, or even like just for typical public scrutiny. But the energy companies seem to be in on it because they know then they're going to have a massive demand for utilities and be able to use eminent domain and just be selling a lot of electricity, right? So it's kind of weird when we're all told, hey, like put these LED light bulbs in to save energy. And you're like, okay. And then the data center comes in and it uses the same amount of electricity as the entire state, like the big one that they're allegedly going to ground break on next week. I'm like, well, this doesn't seem like this kind of matches, right? So it's there's also this part where these data centers come in, and of course the communities, I mean, no one is doing well right now from an economic standpoint. So some of these communities, like, this is unbelievable, right? So they get a data center coming in and the taxes that will roll in to the municipality is something that they could have never dreamed of. The amount of money. I mean, you have a town like Port Washington, which I don't know. Let me bring up the population of Port Washington, Wisconsin, because I think this is important. Port Washington, Wisconsin. By the way, I really love this 32-inch high def monitor I put in summer. It's really been nice. Like that was a good move. I got this blinking thing going on. There's it's a glitch. It's not on the card, on the video card that's updated. It's and other people have got it. I think it's linked to a Windows 11 update, and it's hard to deal with. But I'm going to watch this video back and make sure there aren't any glitches in this, because I like record videos for my classes and stuff. Port Washington, Wisconsin is 12,750 people, so small. So imagine you have $8 billion of new investment. That's only the start. Like, it could go up to like 64 billion, I believe is what they're talking. They've purchased this massive area, farmland, just massive. But suddenly you're getting taxes off of this. And so you're getting more taxes than you're getting from anywhere else. So you have this inflow of taxes, but you also then don't have to increase your schools, because the data center is, even though it's huge, a lot of these are called dark buildings, meaning they only put it's the size of a football field, and they put one light in it because no one's working there. I didn't know this, but this is, so basically you don't have to worry about heating and cool. Well, you have to worry about cooling. So they're cooling these buildings, but they're not heating them because there are no humans really in these buildings except for some technicians. So you can have an $8 billion data center, right? And maybe a staff of 25 people. And of that, 15 are technicians to work on this massive complex and all of that. And another 10 are for the, keeping up the landscaping and, cleaning the facility and stuff like that. But so anyway, you're not getting, it's not like the schools are going to have, Port Washington isn't going to get 500 new students from this data center. So you're not having to expand your schools. You're not going to have a big demand on your police department and fire department, probably because, right, you're not having this big growth of something that's creating a lot of jobs and bringing people in. It's just, you have this building this complex, and you're getting this massive amount of money coming in. So if you're the mayor or a city council, that's massively appealing, because suddenly you can replace every fire truck. You can update all your municipal buildings. If you're a school district, right, and you're levying off on that, you can lower your property taxes for your residents probably 50%. Now, who knows what will happen with the cost of electricity? That could go completely bonkers and wild, but there are so many upfront things which are just so surreal. And no one is thinking long term of what happens if these things go, away, right? In 10 years, what if all the technology needed to have this, what this data center can now be done in the size of 50 by 50 square foot building, because computer chips have become that advanced, and the way that these things might network together. So, I mean, that was a big thing in Wisconsin. They had this Foxconn plant. This was about maybe 10, 15 years ago, which was going to create these big screen TVs, big monitors that would be used. And they were saying, people are moving toward big screen TVs, and how this would just be this big demand industry. And then it never developed. And really, that technology, big screen TVs are really cheap now, and you don't need to have these massive multi plants. So Armored Ghost has asked me about my monitor. It's a flat screen. It's a Dell, specifically made for kind of the work environment. It's not made for gaming, but it's a bright monitor. It's got, I forget, 300 candela, and it's a 1500 to 1 contrast. So it's a QHD monitor, so it's sharper than full HD. But again, and like in front of me, it really works well. And I have my two monitors, my 27 inches on the side. Those are the full HD Dells. They're all Dells, but so this is interesting too. Like these factories of saying when they build these things, that they're not building in the thought that there would be humans there. So you're not having break rooms and number of bathrooms and stuff like that. But the one thing that really caught me, because like LED lights wouldn't be that expensive, and I don't know by code like what you have to do in these warehouses, but it was kind of like a spooky thing to kind of think about, just and again, it's important to keep the facility cool. And in Wisconsin, that's, in winter, that's obviously easier to do than if you put one of these facilities up in Texas or something like that. So Armagos was saying, worry about technology change later, take money. That's exactly what's happening. And I think people are recognizing that. And I would say, like, I think these, for example, solar farms, and when they say like solar farms, like they put all these solar panels over like prime farmland, and, also just like aesthetically, you're having to look at these things and they look horrible. So I think data center, really, like, realistically, data center is just really part of a military complex, right? I mean, because the whole thought would be to try to get like the most advanced computing capability you could, and then if you become like the leader, or you have the ultimate breakthrough in that, then everything kind of flows your way. And I don't know if I was watching a documentary or reading from like a computer scientist and saying, there will be a point when, and it won't be far off, when the computer breakthroughs will basically be able to crack every password and every facial recognition and like every system we have now to get into our banking and medical charts and whatever. Like this computing power will be able to crack that in a second, like for everybody's password, everybody's facial, everybody, and all this stuff is, you'd say, well, maybe not, but it is, because like, I don't know what it is. Every time you go out during a day, it's something like 60 cameras capture you, right? And ring doorbells, cameras at, stores and whatever, people's dash cams, who knows? So like this, you're already, there's this deep database for each of us already in existence out there. But I think there's going to be this point when, even if you turn two-factor, it really won't matter much when these, when the computing power gets to a certain level. So that's been really weird to think about, because I think it will be more in our face, in an overt way. There are thousands of driverless semis that have been on the roads in the last 5 years, and a lot of us don't know it, but and I would say that the humanoid robots, kind of like in the movie I, Robot, like I would envision that type of environment to be fairly common in the next 10 years. And it would be mostly that you're going to have a robot. Now, it's not going to be sentient, right? It's not going to sit there and be able to talk with you, but it's going to be programmed to run task in a warehouse, right? It's going to have a certain program where it's going to agricultural, it's going to go through and it's going to be weeding, right? And it'd be designed to like do that. So it wouldn't necessarily look humanoid, but I think you could also have robots that could be in a humanoid type design, then, that are maybe used in other industrial where it's more dangerous to use humans. Like, I don't know, but I just think we're getting closer, and it'll be something that it'll seem really weird at first when you're out and you see, you know, a robot walking a dog, and then after a while it'll be like you're not going to notice it. Um, so I think, kind of going back on this data center, to me, the fact that the amount of money going into data centers is equal to all of the other construction in my state is very alarming. Like, so if you're behind these data centers, and a lot of the corporations are out of the country, and then they have these non-disclosure agreements, so you don't know who's actually using the equipment inside the facility, right? You know who runs the facility, whatever company, but then they're not telling you. I think it gets really, they know something, right? They're not going to put $8 billion down. And of course, there's a lot of money in the stock market because inflation and the pandemic and all this equity has been, quantitative easing has been created. So it's money's out there. So it can flow somewhere. And I guess in these big funds and whatever, $8 billion is a drop in the bucket, but they know something, right? I mean, they're putting these investments in, and then, I'm like, well, like if you had to build a major league stadium, like a Lambeau Field, that'd be like $3 billion. So this is like 3 of those. And again, you go to these communities and like the whole community, all of the property that's ever been built there since it existed wouldn't be worth $8 billion. So it's just so out of whack. Yeah. Gabriel's talking about Boston Dynamics. Robots are getting really skilled at physical tasks. Yeah. I think, it's going to be areas to, which might be, there might be a, firefighting robot. I'm not going to get into police and having to make judgment calls and robots and stuff like that. But let's say, that you would have a robot that would be able to, enter some areas, or that you'd be able to, that would be high risk for a human, or radiation, right? So if there's a Chernobyl, I mean, how many workers died, having their 30 seconds to shovel debris out of there, versus in modern times being able to deploy robots, which even if they were affected by whatever the radiation, if it would degrade the materials and whatever, it's a robot, right? So, and yeah, 8 billion. I don't know. The books don't sell very hot anymore. The audio, it's funny, my audio books, so both of my books were released in audio, and I did it through Findaway Voices, but then Findaway Voices was bought by Spotify, but then it's like bought by somebody else. I don't even know who owns or not. I own the books, but I don't know who the distributor of my books is anymore. And then I don't even know how to like shut that down, or, I mean, the payment comes directly to me, but like if I were to try to figure out to change my information and stuff, like it's gotten so far removed, and there's no phone number. So back, I think with Findaway Voices, like at the start, there was somebody you could call, or you could like email and they give you a call back, and like there was some, and now then it was email, and now it's like there's nobody. So and my publisher was bought out. So now it's like Bloomsbury, which is the publisher of Harry Potter, owns the rights to my books. Again, as a author, I guess I ultimately own the rights, but the publisher owns the rights to produce and distribute. So, and the audiobook stuff, I don't even know where that is anymore. It's so crazy. So it's really weird. If you are an author and you release stuff, that's where I guess I would probably sign an exclusive deal with Amazon if I had to do it over again. There were some issues where Amazon was allegedly not compensating creative content producers the way that they should, allegedly, I guess. So that's where I went with Findaway Voices. And anyway, you don't make much money off of a audiobook. Anyway, I was just glad to have him out there and say, hey, it's good. It's Mr. Lobo using the same as I've seen that. It's Bolo. But I heard reliance on AI Olmsted makes the user stupider. That's what the data centers might be for. I've heard that, right? The people aren't critically thinking. And when I wrote about cognitive offloading in the velocity of information, there was a chapter toward the front where it was saying, and I had the statistics for this of if you asked somebody, and the book came out, in 2022, so it would have been 2020, 21 when I was researching and doing this, because, you have a production timeline for a book. So let's say in 2021, there was a research study that was published and said, at that time, if you ask somebody like what the capital of something, what's the capital of this state or whatever, they were less likely to venture a guess, and they were just more likely to automatically go to their phone and type in like, what is the capital of whatever? So that's like a rote thing, but it would be also like, how would you get out of, what if there was, again, this chapter of this raging fire in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Like, the thing is, would you go to your phone and try to like figure out like, how do I get out of here, versus like looking at your surroundings and the paths and the wind and all of that? Like, so it's this whole thing, cognitive offloading, of just thinking, well, the internet will be there when we need it, right? And like in Pigeon Forge, when they had the fires, the fiber optic cables burned through and people lost their cell phones. And then also like any GPS systems were kind of useless because you're just driving through fire and smoke. Like, you can see 10 feet in front of you and that's it. So I do think Armored Ghost, there's something to that. AI is making us, really dependent on the internet. So, and again, not so much as a tool, but just thinking it's going to be there. That was one thing when I wrote in School of Airs, the 9/11 harbor rescue of basically like 1 million people by boat, all these different boats coming in, and people just kind of figured out in 8 hours, like, people had been moved out of lower Manhattan. And a question I had in that was saying, like, what would that look like today? Again, the book came out in 2019. So, 18 years after 9/11. But what would it look like, say, in 2019? Or what would it look like today if this event happened? And the thing was, it was kind of saying, like, people would go to their phones. Like, that's where they would try to figure out what to do, instead of like going to each other or like watching what's happening around them and kind of using instincts. They would go to the phone. And, I think that's really a dangerous thing, because it cuts people off from the in vivo experience of whatever, like, you can't be riding down the road in snowy weather and your car sliding around and suddenly you're on your phone of like, what do I do for whatever? It's like, well, you've got to know that. You've got to be trained, and you've got to understand how the car feels and the anti-lock brakes. And if you're not safe, then how you get off and put yourself in a situation where you're not going to get hit by other vehicles. And it just is really strange. Armored Ghost. I doubt people change their political views if AI challenge them. Yeah, I don't think AI is going to have an impact on political views. I think, though, AI, the deep fakes, so like the Sora videos, SORA or Sora, whatever, videos, which are really like, you can go in, like, if you type in Stephen Hawking AI, so it looks like Stephen Hawking is in his wheelchair and he's going 200 miles an hour down the 405 freeway in LA. But the videos are very realistic. So these are done, with kind of like public figures or celebrities. but you can upload yourself. So there's a program that I just subscribed to that I'm going to use in my class to kind of teach deep fake awareness. Like I say class, like my school administrators, because like they don't have any real idea of how to investigate this, how to identify. Like a student shows a video and it's actually deep fake. So it's Clonos, CLO. This is the one, Clonos.ai. That it's like $10 a month. I can upload a video of myself. It needs 45 seconds. And I don't even have to read a script. I just need to be talking and looking at the camera for 45 seconds. Clonos will then take that, and I can then type in a script and a setting, and it will create my image, right? You can upload additional photos of yourself to like let it kind of figure it out. But I saw somebody who used Clonos, and they were saying, I want a video, a 30-second video of me as the winning quarterback in the Super Bowl, and I'm being interviewed. And it literally created that. And so this guy is, and it looks like he's there on the field after the game. And it's just, and this was all done in maybe 20 minutes, right? From the moment of subscribing to uploading to then figuring out the script. And then, so Clonos you can take yourself, you can take a video of somebody else. You can take a video where they've been on YouTube or presenting in public or whatever, and upload it. It'll take that voice, it'll take that image. And the thing is, Clonos, for example, but I mean Sora, I think it's SORA2. That's not available to the public. It is by an invite. I haven't been able to get into it yet. But just like ChatGPT is really ubiquitous, like anyone can use it now, these programs will become pretty ubiquitous. And I talked about this when I was on PBS back in 2019 of how this was already happening back then. It was Michaela Sosa was an avatar generated. I think there were all these stills of her, but then it'd be like advertising things in places and people were like following her. But now you're going to have these capabilities, and it'll be fun for a while. And then suddenly it's going to be people using it to get somebody fired, or it's going to disrupt the political system, because it could be, I don't know so much at a presidential level, but at local politics level or state level, where you're not going to have as much resources to dig in and to say, yeah, this was false. I mean, you're going to, and people like it. I saw a video too that said this will be all over divorce court. Like you're going to have, some spouses who feel they've been wronged and whatever, and they're going to create a video of the other spouse, and they'll have it done through AI. And they're going to, make it seem like they're verbally abusive, or you could make it where it looks like they're violent. And I mean, it's just crazy. So I think those things are just going to really disrupt our understanding of what is the authentic record. And I've told this to my administrators in my classes for years. I said, there will be a day when teachers will demand that they have a body cam that's issued by the school district. And that sounds kind of crazy, right? But the reason will be because it's just going to be too risky to be a teacher, right? Especially when you're around kids who are going to be immature and can capture video of you because you're there, and they have their cameras, and then work it through a program, and then have you say all kinds of things or make it look like you're smoking marijuana or, doing something. And they'll just do it because they think it's fun, and it'll be career ending for people, right? Because this will come out, and then it's going to be hard to disprove some of this stuff just technically. Like, how do you investigate it? I've been talking with, a number of kind of school safety pros about that. And they're like, yeah. And police departments are going to be overwhelmed. And so you're going to have like vendors will get into this area, but you're still going to have, so you're going to have all these questions come up. Like, what do you do if this video surfaces and let's say it's a teacher swearing and smoking marijuana and it goes to the administrator? What's the first thing you do? And the thing is like, it will work through, well, you probably have to put the person on leave while you investigate this. So suddenly they're on leave, and now even if they're found innocent, some software 48 hours later, you're like, yeah, it's been determined a deep fake. And then it can happen the next day, right, to them again, and multiple people, and it can happen to students with other students. And it's just society is, I don't think, ready for this. So that's where I come in and say, I think there will be a teachers union. There'll be teachers saying, we want the authentic record. So we want you to go back, pay for this as a district. And it is really crazy. Let me go back in comments here. The ability is cool, but it changes the game. The uninitiated will fall for it. You're right. Andrew's saying, today a coworker pranked my boss by using AI to make parts look rusted. He texted the photo to my boss, rusted out the office. So Andrew, imagine that. Maybe you order something from somebody, or you have, some work done or whatever, and then you manipulate it with AI, and you're saying, this thing's broken or whatever. I want a refund, or I'll keep it, right? And it's fine. But you're going to have people who are going to use it for unscrupulous things. And I was already fooled by Sotomayor voice fake reading her opinion. So Supreme Court, yeah, but only due to mispronunciation. And see, the pronunciation will be almost indistinguishable, right? The technology is just, the clonal stuff is just really freaky. And I don't think there's anything ill, I'm not saying about that company, but how, again, I could go and provide 45 seconds in front right here, and then say, yeah, I want a video of me water skiing, which I've never done, right? And I am going to be singing the national anthem, right? The Star Spangled Banner. And it would create it, and it'd be like, whoa, there's David, and he's water skiing and singing the national anthem. And hypothetically, if you show that to someone that didn't know me and say, hey, like, I was out last July, I was doing this, they'd be like, oh, it's pretty cool. It was very cool, actually. It's just a deep fake. If technology becomes that advanced, then maybe life becomes far less public and more private, more local too. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, I don't know what dynamics look like. I was watching a video, and it was a lawyer in Nevada, and she was talking about how Nevada is a very litigious state. And she's like, right now there are a lot of lawsuits, like frivolous lawsuits, that take 4 to 5 years to wrap up. And it can be like, someone claims that they were injured by you. It can be whether it happened or not, a little fender bender, and suddenly, they have $1 million that they're saying because, but anyway, she was saying, once this stuff hits and gets in and the court has to then process it, how is the court going to do that? Right? Like they're going, well, here's the evidence, present it. So really, like, it's like right now, if you have dash cam video, that immediately puts you far ahead if there's any litigation, right? But what if you now have fabricated dash cam video, right? What if you have the dash cam video, but you're able to use AI to modify that sequence of events, right? Of having like the car in front of you suddenly like slow down and throw its brake lights on and like it cut you off or something. I'm just saying it's really weird things. Will they teach? This is a good question. Will they teach awareness of AI? They don't. Nobody does. And even vendors aren't going into this yet. when I teach my class for aspiring superintendents, I pretend I'm a vendor. I come into the room and I do a 20-minute presentation. I have PowerPoint to go with it, and it's about my company. It's all fake, right? But how you can detect how, if you subscribe, right, of $25,000 a year, we'll provide this service to you, and we can determine if something is 80% deep fake, 50%, or like zero, right? But we can't do 100% like that it's authentic. We can have these tiers. So like, would you buy the software? And like half of the soups are like, yeah, I buy it, like aspiring superintendents, and half would be like, well, no. But then it's like, oh, well, then how would you handle this, right? If this video surfaced. So go through a few more here. Captain Capitalism. It couldn't. No, it could not. The AI version would not be. You're right on with that. It would be interesting to see an AI video of Captain Capitalism. So, oh my goodness. Andrew's saying my company has posters everywhere about being aware of deepfake photos. Really, not rush to judgment. That is interesting. See, I think that's going to have to hit schools. I'm saying schools because kids are immature and are going to see this on a TikTok challenge, right? Of, hey, like, AI your teacher, doing whatever. So, and let's go down. I suspect my own employer is trying to get me to breach security with AI. I have to pass the test. Holy smokes, I hope not. So yeah. So, so we talk here about AI and data centers and stuff. And as this discussion kind of started tonight, we had lost Mr. BoJangles. That was one thing too, when I was out walking the day after, he passed. And I was thinking, he is owning an animal, owning a pet. He's not affected by these things, right? Like, they're not affected by technology and the economy and bureaucracy and politics and all of the crazy stuff that impacts humans, right? That he just lives his life, and his life is his catnip bananas and is sitting out by the sunny window and eating and just, getting some pets from the family and just getting petted and just hanging around. And it's also for us a real grounding thing because, like, here it's just kind of simpler and maybe stable thing that isn't influenced by all of these crazy things. And I also starting to see more ads for like robot pets and things. And I'm sure to some extent that will catch on as a novelty, but I really don't see people like, I don't see where that is going to develop. Oh, we're going to have, the family robotic dog. I don't think that the return on an investment is going to be there. Someone trying to do that, unless they're using it for a specific purpose of like surveillance or to monitor a perimeter or something like that. But, well, I am going to get going. My main monitor here, nothing was flickering. On the side, it was a little bit. Again, it's either a software glitch or it's an update glitch. I can't sniff it out, and it's not. If it doesn't impact this video, I'm going to mess with it because I'm not the type of person to go and edit a registry of a computer, and I'm not going to take down my whole system. One of the issues here is like, this is a great system. I had a lot of updates done to this computer in the last year, but the original build was in 2018, so it was Windows 7, and then it was upgraded to Windows 10 and Pro, and now it's Windows 11 Pro. So you don't have fresh installs, so you have all these kind of little remnants in the machine, and I think some of that is kind of manifesting at times, and I can live with it because I don't do nearly as much with the PC and down here as I did in the past. So, but at the same time, like when I'm doing my university or like real time stuff through, the university classes, I got to make sure I'm not blinking out if I'm in Zoom or anything like that. So I have a really nice headset. I've got to try that again too. I'm kind of looking forward to that. So RoboPets is your personal. Yeah. See, there's going to be this whole aspect of, you'll have a robotic pet, but then it's going to have cameras and sensors. And what happens if you have, I bring this up again to my students of what if a student with a disability has a robotic animal that they bring in. Actually, there have been a few cases of this, and it usually has sensors, and it's like a student with a seizure or something like that, or even like a support robot. As crazy as that sounds, what's your policy for school if someone shows up with that? And if you deny it, how's the Americans with Disability Act going to react to this? Like, what if you can actually, have an argument and prove, like, yeah, this robotic. I knew one situation which was authentic, and it was a robotic dog. It was university built it, and it had all these sensors. This girl had seizure disorder, very severe, and was impacted, and it would give biofeed. Her feedback would feed into this thing, and it would also monitor what was happening in her environment before the seizure to try to give antecedent data, which was pretty thoughtful. Then it would position itself close to her. So if she were to fall, this was an actual thing that I saw. But then there's these questions of, okay, you can see where the good intent is, but it's also like logging into your network, take video of its surroundings. It's pretty crazy. So let me go here. Thanks, BoJangles. Oh, Gabriel, thanks for being here. I appreciate that. I didn't know if I would talk about it or not. I kind of felt a little like it wasn't, I shouldn't say like BoJangles wasn't worthy of being talked about, but like the whole experience kind of seemed private, like not to bring it on a discussion. But I also, I needed to run the software tonight because I, again, was checking these glitches, and I thought, this is worth talking about because, and I appreciate that you gave feedback here. And see on the other side, yeah, there's a story called like the Rainbow Bridge, and I don't really get into that, but it's more like probably for younger, like for kids, of saying, when an animal passes, it's waiting at the Rainbow Bridge, and eventually we'll meet up with it someday, and that's where we'll reunite. And but it is kind of a weird thing too, to be like, whoa, like he's gone. Like I'll never see him again. I'll never hear that little silly meow of, I'll never do the cat elevator. And then he would always put his legs up in the air in the cat elevator to clear, like, as I take him off the steps. And like, part of your life is gone. I'm going to go through at some point, and I know I have a really terrific photo of him that we took, I think in 2018 around Christmas. And he's really kind of at his prime then. It's a really great photo. And I want that one printed off. And also like one of him in the chair. I might just put that up on my computer. I've got a little magnetic area on the side, just a regular 4x6 photo. Because right here where I'm sitting, I mean, this was always, it was always something to come down in the morning, and it'd be cold. I'd have a little heater going down here, and it'd just be cold. But you had BoJangles down here, and then things kind of just got reframed. So yeah, losing him stung. I mean, it always stings. I said this one was a little different because I think he identified me, more of a connection, wanted to hang around me, and I said if there was a cat that kind of replicated my personality, I think it was really him, especially as he got older. But yeah, kind of just the way things are. Well, I don't have anything else to share. I appreciate all of your time tonight, and appreciate all you guys. Oh, I have one thing to share. So I am thinking about doing a new podcast. And I actually obtained the YouTube channel for it, and it's called Second Half Sense. So let me just, there's nothing on the channel, which is a holder right now, but I have the channel. I did a search, and like nobody has this as a channel. I've been seeing a lot of feeds pop up in my YouTube, and it's people like in their 50s and 60s of saying like, hey, like when you get to 50s and 60s, here's things you need to know and about living life and retirement and stuff. And I was like, I find those kind of interesting. And I was thinking, I have a lot of stuff I could talk about, and also a lot of stories that I think either things that are happening now or how you kind of reflect on things when you get to be like my age, right? Like 54 in a week. And so the title Second Half Sense was available, and I think it's kind of catchy. And basically, hey, Andrew, if you already subscribed, great. I'll have to put a video over there, and if you watch like 4,000 hours of it, then I get monetized. So I have to start from scratch because this channel's monetized, although I make like $25 a year on it. But I think there's a chance for it to be catchy, and the format would be pre-recorded, and the videos would be between 12 and 18 minutes long. So never longer than 18, because I was kind of reading up on like some algorithm, stuff, obviously. And I would do 2 pre-recorded videos a week, and I would probably do most of them down here because I don't really have the means outside of my phone to do like a good remote video. But I already had like a list of things that I would go through and cover. And I thought that, the thing is, I don't get paid out from YouTube until I get $100 in that account. So I got paid out once, but now I don't know what my YouTube balance is. It's probably like $30 right now. So who knows? I don't produce new content. So I do shorts, quite a few little shorts. And actually I do those with AI. So, but they're only like 10 seconds long, and most of them are just kind of sports related. But like when the Brewers are playing and the Packers, those will usually get like 1,000 views, but 1,000 views on 10 seconds gets you like 12 cents. But I outlined like my first 10 shows, like what they would be. And I think it's pretty catchy. So some of it would be finance and some of it would be other. And, make how to have awesome doctor appointments after age 50. Because I totally like changed the way that I approach my like doctor's appointments and how I kind of prepare for those. And so it's a little bit, well, it's not niche, right? I guess, but 50s, 60s. One thing I also read is the age of the viewers on YouTube has shifted. So it's like people 30s and older is like the majority, where, when YouTube like 15 years ago was 20s and 30s. And now it's kind of like Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but where that got to an older demographic. And I just see like a ton of these channels starting, and I'm like, I could do that. And you're looking and it's like, this dude's been doing this for 6 months. He's got like 38,000 subscribers. And I'm not sure, like, these are interesting, but I'm not sure these are anything like above and beyond, like, again, what I could do. So I'm kind of working that out. So yeah, it is called Second Half Sense. So you can find that. And I don't know if I'm not going to mess around with trying to get the link. But if I do it, I would probably start in spring. I always like doing the Safety Doc podcast. A few things with that though is, one, I had to do an hour when I started because I was quickly syndicated in the 405 media with Captain Capitalism. He had a really great time slot, and then I had like a 2 a.m. slot. But back around like 10 years ago, the 405 Media was an online, almost like it was a streaming, like a radio station basically, but it would have 1 hour slots for podcast. And it was run by John Grant out of Los Angeles, 405 highway, right? And he had somebody leave, and I think Aaron recommended to John because John needed to fill like an hour slot. And he said, hey, like David can come in. And so I had a slot, and then eventually I got moved into a better slot. So like the shows would get a lot of listens. So like my audio numbers looked really good, although like I wasn't getting any money for that. But anyway, when I would do the safety doc, it was, usually an hour long or longer. And then I interviewed about 50 people, which was great, but there's a lot of work with that. And then I would rip everything in audio. I would level all the audio, edit the video, and then do a blog post, and I shut down safetyphd.com. I was going to pay like $300 plus a year to have it up as a managed WordPress. So I was like, well, what I'm going to do is if I do this, I'm not even going to, I'll have some kind of logo made for it, like off of Fiverr, but I'm not going to have like a intro song or anything like that, because like a lot of the YouTubers like Dan Ledgley or Jeremiah Babe who talk more finance, like they just do that. Yeah, Andrew, could you put the link? I mean, I guess I can try to. Hey, I see you subscribed. So, okay. So I can't get over there. Andrew, if you can drop it. Switch. Yeah, it just has a hat right now as the logo. So right there it is from Andrew. So if you just type in second half cents in YouTube, you'll find it. And it just, like I said, it just has a hat. This is an avatar placeholder. But it wouldn't have anything to do with school safety or community safety. So I needed to do a clean break. But I did more than 200 episodes of the safety doc. So like if you took all of the episodes and you listened, like binge listened or binge watched them, I think it would take you like 8 days or something. It was crazy. And when I took all of the blog posts down, it was something like the equivalent of a 400-page book. So, but second half cents would be, I would do a little bit of a theme, a script, and then it would just basically be, 12 or 18 minutes. And I would go through and have kind of different rotating things that I would talk about. It wouldn't be interactive, although like I suppose if the channel would have some success, I might open up, like a live chat companion or something like that. I don't know, to see. But I was thinking about that over the last few months of like, I did like the safety doc. I liked doing the podcast. The issue was the level of commitment, and there wasn't much return on it, and it felt too much like a job. I mean, it was there to promote the books too, I guess. And also like school safety is just not a catchy topic, and it got to be kind of dark after a while. You're talking about things that aren't real positive. So I just thought, you know what, we'll just see. So I got the the site here, the channel already, and I'll just kind of take it. But let me see if I can find the shows that I have kind of cooking. Yeah. So I have, oh man, I have 29 pages in a Google Doc here, like ideas that I wrote down. But, one is like scaling back holiday decorating, less stress, more joy after 50. And hey, like before age 50, like I was outside with like extension ladders way up in trees, like with rope lights. And we had this big wooden sled that a neighbor when I was growing up gave to me as a decorative thing. Like I was already an adult at that point. And he's like, put this in front of your, it looked really cool, but like it had weathered over the years and it was just always a beast to get upstairs and set outside. And my wife's just said like, stop doing that. Like just put it in a garage sale. It's not worth like dragging this thing up. And I was like, yeah, she was right. And, you know, we don't do the rope lights anymore because I don't want to be on a ladder. I mean, I worked with somebody who fell off a ladder with his gutters and was paralyzed. So, you know, just how to scale back, still, you know, make things look good. But I had another one was the simple retirement spreadsheet your CPA will love as a title, practical finance. So I have a spreadsheet I put together and my CPA is like, I wish every client I had did this because it is so easy. It's only 4 pages. And I wouldn't have put any numbers in there, but I could show like how I kind of organize things because like if you ever meet with a CPA or financial advisor stuff, this is really clear, really well laid out. And she's like, I just wish I could take this template and kind of give it to some other clients. Reflection, 3 lessons I learned when I was younger that I didn't appreciate. Another one, why Hoka Bondi shoes are perfect for walking after 50. Product review. I love my Hoka Bondis, and I never lace them up either. So I think that's kind of interesting. Or I lace them up, I never tie them. So I'll walk like 6 miles, and I never tie them. Planning ahead, how to pass along heirlooms thoughtfully. We've started to have a talk with our daughters, like, hey, like here's a really expensive kitchen table, like the Amish built for us. So like eventually when we downsize or whatever, like this is a very valuable piece. Like, so give it considerations, but at the same time, who knows if, you know, they would want it and what. So healthy living after 50, simple changes that make a big difference. Let me come up with a few others. Setting up a home office in your 50s, comfort, productivity, and style. This office is built for me. You know, my vision isn't as great as it was when I was younger. Having the bigger screens, having a clock to the right is just very convenient. Then also I got these really furry armchair covers. I mean, that's much, much more convenient. I've got a big calculator, not so much that I can't see the calculator. It's just like for quick stuff, it's just nice to have a big button calculator you can ding down on. So, so just how I set this up in the lighting and stuff like that is really for me at this stage of my life. Yeah, so those are some examples that I went through, and I would probably record like the first 10 before I would release one. I'd have them all ready to go, like queued up, and then I would release like 2 a week and then kind of see how things go. But I wouldn't do much editing on them. Bollards are boring. Yeah, I don't want to get into bollards and school safety, and I'm proud of the stuff that I did. I think it really was valuable. And that all lives here on YouTube on the Safety Doc podcast, but no, safety finance. Yeah. So let me, Bolo, if you want to go over there and subscribe. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, let's I think some positive news coming out too, because I know I don't do much. I haven't done much on here for a while, and I was thinking about that of like, well, thanks for subbing. Yeah, over there. So I'll keep you posted. I think I would be high energy. So if you watch like Jim Bruno and the Brunoverse, that would be my delivery. So it'd be like 12 to 18 minutes of high energy, but not anger, like high energy, positive storytelling, like kind of very, so by watching it, I mean, it should be pretty engaging and uplifting and pretty animated and genuine. So I think I would have fun doing it. Again, I really enjoyed the Safety Doc podcast. Toward the end, it kind of felt like a chore, and it felt a little bit forced because there was emphasis from the publisher to kind of use the podcast to promote the books. But at the same time, man, there were days like I would get up in the morning, and it would be like episode 100 or something like that, right around that. And I'd be like, wow, I'm going to record a show tonight, or I've got a guest on tonight. I couldn't wait for that. And my little script, and I would email him, some stuff ahead of time. Here's what questions I'm going to ask. You can kind of think about it. I had Larry Lawton on the America's Biggest Jewel Thief, right? But I was like genuinely excited when I would get done editing, and it'd take a long time and actually release and publish everything out. And never got a whole bunch of views, never generated much, but professionally, I felt like I was growing a lot, and I was having a good time doing that. So, yeah. Well, again, I'm going to get going, and I appreciate everybody. Oh, Ron Wayne. So, Ron is. I appreciate that, Ron. So the Kentucky Batman, Ron Wayne. So he is the Kentucky Batman. Yeah, I appreciate that. It was a rough Wednesday, and it was one of those days where, again, the weather after like a really pretty warm, sunny fall, right? It was like low 40s, 30-mile-an-hour winds, raining, and just like dark skies, just a bleak, miserable day. And of course, kind of matching like the mood and matching that this is the day, this cat who's been with us a long time and who really, I appreciated him a lot, was going to leave this world. And then, like I said, I just drove for like an hour after that. I left the parking lot and I drove to the community over, and actually I was driving around. They had like a splash pad that we would take the girls to when they were younger. And it was new, and there was nobody there, obviously. Nobody had a splash pad when it's 43 degrees and windy and rainy. But I parked in the parking lot, and I just kind of like reflected for a while. I mean, couldn't get out, it's raining, and I just kind of came home after that. But yeah, like just in the bigger thing, I mean, there will be likely a kitten coming into the family in spring, and then there's always this kind of circle of life. But it did really sting. It was really, and again, I think he had his medical needs, and we became caregivers, and but he was a cool dude. He had a fun. He had a personality that I got into, like, and it was almost like, especially it would be so funny. You'd open up the freezer, get him his ice cubes, and he'd go meow, and I go meow, and he'd go meow, and you could just back and forth, and just a good guy. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be to see that. And as I said, it is, you just kind of get caught off guard when you look at pictures, and I'm sharing them out with the family, and suddenly I'm looking at myself. I'm like, oh my God, I was like 40 years old. Hair's all black. I look young. Not that I look bad or like old now, but I'm like, it was a whole different person. There's my daughter, and she's 5, and she's holding him, and she's in college now. And also, like, oh my goodness, we totally redid like this room. I forget that it had that paneling, and you just are like, holy smokes. And you lose this connection of the cat was a connection to that time too, which it's hard to describe. I'm not doing it justice, but you lose a connection Like when my, grandparents passed, like they would tell me firsthand stories of like, yeah, the hobos from the railroad, which ran through. It was interesting because both of my grandparents like lived right next to a railroad, like a block away, different communities. They'd be like, yeah, in the Great Depression, the hobos would travel on the trains and they would get off and they would come up to the house and they would ask for stuff, or they'd like go through your garden and take stuff. And it's amazing to hear those stories now. It was firsthand stories. And then, they passed away, and you only have those, but you can never kind of retell them as they did. And they were a connection to this time of imagining that. And in both of those communities now, like they don't even have railroads that go through them. Like, you can't even tell there's ever been a railroad there, but it is a weird thing to kind of see that. So yeah, it is. I appreciate that, Ron. You and Misty, I appreciate that. The hobo sign for nice lady is a stick figure of a cat. Oh my goodness. So yeah. All right, everybody. I'll be on, I don't know when, but I'll be on again. And I'll try to give a little more heads up than, 20 minutes from now, Doc's going to be on. So, all right. Let me take us out of here. I don't use StreamYard is really awesome. They've got a lot of new features like a notes, so you can almost like a teleprompter, which will be good for when I do my university stuff. But they put so much in here like that I just don't know how to use it. I'm a big fan of StreamYard, but again, it's kind of gotten beyond me right now. Okay, this is for a good friend, Ron Wayne. Ron, this is Ron Wayne, and he sees a ghost. All right, here we go.
Holy shit, a ghost.
Ooh.
Do you mind moving out of the way? You're blocking the TV.
Oh shit. Sorry, man.
It's okay. Thank you.